Today I want to talk about how to make use of your dark side. What is the dark side of the human psyche? The dark side can be called the shadow, according to Jung, or some people call it the dark sibling. According to Freud, it can be id or the ego. It's essentially the revolting parts in yourself that you wish not to associate with characteristics like impulsiveness, greed, rage, laziness, etc. Jung argued that the shadow is elusive. There's a light, there's shadow, and it is the inseparable part of yourself. Before I go any further, I just want to summarize a little bit about this Netflix series called The Blue Eye Samurai. So Mizu was the half-white, half-Japanese sword woman who ventured out for revenge. She was called the Oniru, the outcast. She was hated, she was called the demon, she was bullied constantly during her childhood. Basically, she had a crappy childhood. She didn't have a father growing up, and her mother, in the series, it was implied that she worked as a prostitute. So basically, her life was just entrapped with misfortune and adversity. She just wanted to revenge. She went after the four white men, the only four white men in Japan back then, because she believed that it was their fault that her life was so miserable and difficult. So she went ahead and became an apprentice to a swords master, and he was also her mentor. So throughout the entire series, she was just enraged with bloodthirst, and she just eliminated countless of lives to conquer her quest. She went through a lot of defeat, but she picked herself up every time. But one day, her sword was broken, and she just couldn't forge herself another sword, and if she doesn't have her sword, she couldn't go on with her revenge. But this is important. Why she couldn't forge her sword? So her mentor said it was because there's more to her than the demon inside her.
An artist gives all they have to the art, the whole, your strengths and deficiencies, your loves and shames.
Finally, Mizu was able to forge her sword and mend her relationship with her apprentice. She became whole, according to her mentor. So in the book, Meeting the Shadow, The Hidden Power of the Dark Side of the Human Nature, edited by Connie Zweig and Jeremiah Abrams, Joseph Campbell suggested that one powerful aspect that was revealed in myths, in the middle of the abyss, there's a voice of salvation emerges. The black moment signifies the imminent arrival of a transformation. In the darkness of time, the radiance of light emerges. The YouTube channel Academy of Ideas said something like this: very few people can admit the fact that they have not always been good and virtuous and compassionate. Instead, they have selfish and destructive aim, even immoral tendency. So why is it important to discover one's dark side? What are the consequences of suppressing your dark side? So for Jung, this is like the most important thing ever. He was like, yo, modern man, they need to connect with the spiritual side of themselves, you know? And to make that happen, he's got to face his demons and deal with all the bad stuff and be friends with the devil. It's not like men have other options, man. Just kidding. I was just paraphrasing him. The consequences of not having a healthy ego or not develop the dark side and let it assimilate with yourself is dire. Imagine the whole nation only focus on the good side of human psyche, right? The side that's under the light. Robertson said that's when the darkest and the densest shadow was cast. And that's why there were so many horrific events happen in human history. If you want to know more, please go ahead and buy the book. It's just really dark. So basically, if the shadow or the dark side or the ego of a human is not appropriately dealt with, the symptom might infest a family, then infest an entire community, and the entire community can infest the whole country. In the book Meeting the Shadow, the author wrote it is the first stage toward consciousness. With no consciousness, we are at the mercy of the worst that lies with us. But when do you know that you are ready to do shadow work? Or how to have a healthy ego? Connie Zweig wrote something like, only when people are generally shocked into perceiving who they truly are, rather than how they perceive themselves or how they optimistically believe who they are, that people can begin to embark in the journey towards the individual reality or the process of individuation, according to Carl Jung. Andrew Bart Smuggler wrote, evil in the human psyche comes from a failure to bring together, to reconcile the pieces basis of our experience, when we embrace all that we are, even the evil in us is transformed. When the diverse living energies of the human system are harmonized, the present bloody face of the world will be transformed into an image of the face of God. Owning the shadow means confronting it and assimilating it into the contents of an enlarged self-concept. But when can one person see their own shadow? It can happen when we feel stagnant, slow, and we feel our life loses its color, when we doubt the value that we live by, or when we watch our delulu become untrululu, basically our fantasies shatter, or when we are overcome by envy, jealousy, sexual drives, or ambition. The feel of the hollowness in our consciousness, that's when the shadow work should begin. So how does a person assimilate her dark side? Carl Jung wrote, there is no generally effective technique for assimilating the shadow. It is more like diplomacy or statesmanship, and it is always an individual matter. First, one has to accept and take seriously the existence of the shadow. Second, one has to become aware of its qualities and intentions. This happens through conscientious attention to moods, fantasies, and impulses. Third, a long process of negotiation is unavoidable. Friedrich Nietzsche also wrote, the great epochs of our lives are at the points when we gain the courage to rebrand our badness as the best in us. Interpreting our dark side is a moral problem. It involves recognizing what we have repressed and how did people repress those negative traits that they have in themselves. How people rationalize and deceive themselves. What kind of goals do people have? What have we heard or named in the process of achieving those goals? But how deep is your love if you have to love the disgusting and the perverse part of yourself? Poet Robert Ply, he suggests that in order to eat the shadow, people have to identify it and people have to ask other people about their own disowned traits, and also use creativity to integrate it. Active imagination. Think about the situations where your shadow is necessary. The thing is, the shadow is not all bad. Jung suggests that within our shadow, there are positive traits like seductive traits, creative impulse, and maybe assertiveness. How do you find your shadow? You can ask yourself questions like, what are the qualities in people that you find annoyed or dislike? What are your most deeply ingrained prejudices? Which group do you least identify with? Who are the people that you would not consider to associate with? Do they repulse, offend, or terrify you in some way? In what kind of situation where you are ashamed to be alive? What inner horror that you find just unbearable? So there's gold in our ego. It's the awareness of choice. It's possible to mediate the tug of war between your shadow and yourself with a capital S. It's all about choice, how we enact in our world, and can we take full responsibility for the world that we are creating. Dante said, the only devils in the world are those running around in our own hearts. That is where the battle should be fought. Personally, when I first learned about my shadow, I feel like Sophie in House Moving Castle when she lifted the tiles and there were like a bunch of insects crawling out and she just had to like sweep it off. Oh woman, that's what I felt like. I felt shame, embarrassment. I thought I was here, but actually I was here. Before that, I was like, oh, I'm so virtuous. I'm so good. I'm good at helping people. But in fact, I was able to commit the most reprehensible things ever. I could be completely irrational, emotional driven, and drop too much into fantasies. The moment I realized I have the dark side and I let it sit into my daily life without acknowledging it for a while, I had the urgency to understand myself. And Carl Jung's psychoanalysis is fascinating because it's artistic, poetic, and scientifically reasonable. Of course, Carl Jung is not 100% correct. No scholar in the world is. And his school of thoughts is not everyone's cup of tea. But hey, if you're not interested in him, you wouldn't watch the whole video. So I think I'm just about teetering at the first step of the process. The second step, that's where I need the most work. Take inventory of my dark side's quality and try to be aware of it when I act out my dark side without my knowledge. So the integration and the assimilation parts where you put your dark side to use, it's a lifelong process. It's gonna take a lot of writing, reflecting, reading, understanding myself, lots of contemplation too, probably meditation. Can I create my own redemption arc and maybe be a little bit better. Let's see about that. So what do you think about the dark side or the shadow concept? Please leave a comment below. But how can a person accept the dark side of themselves? Andrew Huberman said, you just have to think about it with humor, make jokes about it, make it funny, make fun of yourself, don't take it too seriously, which I find it really hard. Anyways, that's it for the topic. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you find it helpful. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribe if you like this kind of topic. Also, if you like the video, please leave me a like so the algorithm notices me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.